So this is Module 2 for Chapter 6, Sensation and Perception, and now we're going to go ahead and focus on vision. So what are some of the basic capabilities when we talk about somebody's vision? Well, first we want to go ahead and see, can you detect changes in brightness? And one of the things that children or infants can do right from birth is be able to go ahead and detect the levels of brightness. And you can see that by their pupil as it'll dilate and it'll get bigger as there are less light, and then it'll narrow when there's more light. So this is one of those things that you can detect brightness from the get-go. Another thing that infants can do right after birth is that they can visually track. Now, that doesn't mean they can track something that's really fast. It means they can track something that's kind of going at this rate, fairly slow, but they can track, and they didn't have to learn that. They became equipped with it. They do have color vision, so it may be interesting to know that a few people believe that infants only are able to view things in black and white. That's not the case. We come equipped with color vision just like you right now are seeing this in color. What you don't usually see, and why babies usually have been confused as having black and white vision, is that they really like contrast. And so, of course, you can't get more contrast than black and white. So that's one of the reasons that myth has kind of developed. You also see that they can see things 20/20 at 8 inches. So, about that far. If you're looking at the picture there of that gentleman, not too much farther than that. And so babies are able to see 20/20 at that point. Otherwise, they're seeing things more at like 2600, meaning most things are very blurry to them. And one of the reasons for that is that they have a lack of maturation regarding their eye muscles, and that usually needs to come online. And so that flexing of the lens that allows you to focus in and focus out, that's more lacking and only is going to come as they develop down the road. Okay. The other thing that they're able to do is visual accommodation, which is what I was just referring to, why the acuity is not necessarily very good. Because visual accommodation allows that lens to flex back and forth and allows it to zoom in on something and then pull back on other things. And so you're going to see the visual accommodation soon start kicking in, but it takes a while for infants to be able to master that. And so they don't really see very well when they're born, which is different than a lot of the other senses we're going to be talking about in our modules. So if you look at the infant's vision after birth, one of the things they do is do prefer complex patterns, but they can't be too complex. In other words, they've got to be pretty big, bold, striking differences between the different colors rather than something more subtle. As part of the complex patterns, they're also attracted to movement. So pretty much from day one, they're going to be attracted to things moving versus things are not. Usually things that are moving can cause us harm. So we evolved over time to be attracted to that regardless. And we can see the results by the fact that infants usually like to see some movement. Once again, it's got to be kind of slow for infants, but in general, they're attracted to movement. They also look at what they see well. So I want you to think about these sorts of things. Okay, they're attracted to movement, and they look at what they see well. But we know from the other slide, they don't see well very, very often, only at about 8 inches. So if we think about when you're holding a baby, and usually try to do it fairly conventionally and hold a baby not too far from you, what you're seeing is them looking at the face. And that serves the purpose for bonding. But from the baby's perspective, it's all the things we just talked about coming together. So look on my face and think about things that have a lot of contrast, that they move, and that are going to be in that infant's field of vision. And what you're going to have is the eyes. So if you look at my eyes darting around during this lecture here, so I'm trying to look at various screens, you'll see I got big white eyes with the pupils in the middle there that provide real good contrast. If I'm staring at the baby, I'm usually holding them not more than maybe 8 inches away from my face, so now I'm in focus. And then also, our eyes move, and so there's movement. And you got the 3 big criteria for why babies love to stare into people's eyes. is because they meet all the criteria, of course, and then it serves the side byproduct of being able to attach to those individuals. Okay. Now, only a couple months into it, babies now start to prefer looking at regular faces than scrambled faces. And so researchers would hold up, maybe the eye is where the mouth's supposed to be and an ear is where an eye is supposed to be. Babies don't like looking at that. They want to look at the things that they're used to seeing in the environment, a typical face, because they know the face is the one that has been caring for me. And you can see on the slide here kind of how the visual scanning really works. So you can see when they're only 1 month old, they're only scanning the eyes a little bit, but they're over and looking at the chin, they're looking up above the hairline. But then at 2 to 2 months old, which is just right where my picture is right here, but you see a lot more looking at the eyes and the mouth, the things that are moving and the things that are very important when you're trying to interpret what other people are talking about. Now, going back to our previous conversation in regards to complexity, you can see now infants liking like a checkered board, kind of a big checkerboard. You can see with those contrasts there that they really like it. But you can see it's a bit muddled because their vision still isn't very good. The acuity is down. So if you have it too complex, like you see in the bottom figure there, it just washes out as one big blue mess. We also know that babies have the capability or awareness of depth perception. And one of my personal little favorite experiments here, where they tried to measure not only infants, or in this case toddlers, depth perception, but to also see if they were willing to have their depth perception influence on whether they would go across what we call a visual cliff. And so you can see a picture right there of a visual cliff, and they have a caregiver trying to encourage the child who's crawling to cross the visual cliff. And so they think they're going to be going right off the edge, and they're very, very nervous about it because by the time you crawl, you've also experienced falling. And so all of a sudden depth has meaning. And so you're going to be very reluctant as a little toddler to cross the visual cliff, and you're going to pause for a good period of time. So the visual cliff first said, hey, look, they do have depth perception, but also starting at a fairly early age, they are now fearing the depth because they've dropped and they've hurt themselves. And so they, of course, don't want that to happen again. And so that's what the depth perception or the visual cliff experiment really helped us kind of come into understanding of. And then also, one of the things that we need to know is that infants are making sense of their world all the time. They're constantly investigating, hey, what's going on? And they're making these intuitive theories that allow them to interpret and make sense of this world that they are now in. Because it's a pretty foreign world. They don't know a whole lot about what's going on. So what we're going to do next is tackle a few different additional senses of hearing, taste, smell, and somatic senses, which is a mouthful. And so that's it for Module 3.